Welcome to another episode of the Go With John show. We have Tim Wilson with us today. Tim, thank you for coming in.
Thank you, John, for having me.
So we are actually recording today in the Long and Foster Studios in McLean, Virginia. We appreciate the organization giving us this space to record. So Tim, tell us who you are and how are you related to Long and Foster and what do you do?
So I'm the CEO of Prosperity Home Mortgage, and we are a mortgage bank. We're in the top 20 independent mortgage banks in the country. We do about $15 billion in loans per year, most of that purchase business. And my partners I've got real estate partners in 46 states across the country that are part of Home Services of America. Of course, Long and Foster is our largest brand across the country by far. And Prosperity started as the mortgage bank for Long and Foster prior to being purchased by Home Services.
Okay, so how did you get to become the CEO of Prosperity? What was your path here, in a nutshell?
Yeah, I've been a mortgage banker for 35 years. So really, the net result of getting to Long and Foster was Dave Stevens. So Dave Stevens was former commissioner of FHA, but was CEO of Long and Foster for a couple of years, and he and I worked together at a previous bank for 15 years. And when he became CEO of Prosperity, when he became CEO of Long and Foster, he brought me in to run affiliated business.
Gotcha. So what is your market area? So you're in 46 states.
Yes.
What kind of challenges do you face operating in 40? Because each state has their own set of regulations that you got to deal with.
Correct. Yeah, it's much more difficult than when we were just in the Mid-Atlantic, and but much more rewarding. I mean, we've got 30 plus brands that are our real estate partners, and went from about 10,000 agents to 50,000 agents. So very rewarding.
Yeah. So you do a lot of traveling?
I do. I'm probably, in a non-COVID environment, I'm on the road at least 2 weeks a month.
Wow. That's got to be tough.
Yeah. I enjoy it.
Yeah,
that's where I feel most at home.
Yeah, you have to. So I guess tell us a little bit. I want to just hear a little bit about tell us a little bit about Prosperity. What kind of products do you guys offer? What's your ideal customer? And then we'll kind of get into maybe some of your history and some of your stories that may be somewhat entertaining.
Okay, so Prosperity, I think we're great at conforming loans, anything Fannie, Freddie, FHA, but really strong VA lender. We waive a lot of fees for our veterans, and we're real strong. I would say up to $3 million is in our wheelhouse, and we've done loans higher than that, but really up to $3 million is in our wheelhouse, and so we don't have a whole lot of gaps. Construction perm would be one of them, but we are working to fill that gap and hope to have that done in sometime in the next year. But we're a large lender and primarily all purchase.
Good. So, reading your bio, so you've done some work with diversity and inclusion, and that's a big hot topic right now. So, what is your, what is your role with Prosperity with the area of diversity and inclusion? What are you guys doing?
Well, we're doing a lot. I think our industry needs to do better in that space, for the Fair Housing Act passed 50 years ago. And over the past 3 years, we haven't just, I've seen a lot of money thrown at this issue without solving the problem. I think what it's going to take is for senior leaders, decision makers to be involved in looking at it as a business issue and donating both time, energy, and the power to make decisions into this problem, and that's the only way it's going to be fixed. But we've been very active over the past 3 years.
Right. So what do you see as kind of the biggest hurdle there, or what do you see as the biggest problem? Is there something that you can look at and say, wow, this? So you say the Fair Housing Act passed 50 years ago. What is not working? Where do you think the biggest challenge for underprivileged communities?
I would use the term underserved.
Underserved. Okay.
And that they're underserved is the definition. I mean, there's not enough housing activity in those markets, and I think there's got to be more focus there. So, one of the things, as you know, in our model, we have loan officers sitting in real estate offices.
Right.
One thing we started it in end of 2019, is we hired 23 CLOs, community loan officers.
Okay.
All either African American or culturally Hispanic, so they're bilingual. So that made a huge difference. I mean, that group, I just looked at their numbers today. They've already done over 225 million in applications this year, and that was from zero 2 years ago.
Wow.
And so they'll end up doing about 500 million in production this year. So, you know, it was clear to me, you've got to have reps that look like the community.
Right.
And we hadn't done a good enough job in that up to now, but we are really committed to that. We know it works. The other thing I would say is, we've opened an education center in Philadelphia, and it's a test. You know, we're testing things in multiple different markets.
Right.
In Atlanta, we opened a real estate office in College Park, an inner city Atlanta market. And you know, my theory around minority lending is there's a 40% gap between minorities and Caucasians in home buyers. And you know, I don't look at it as something that's just the right thing to do, although it is. I think it's good business. I mean, I think that there's a trend there. And there's an opportunity. And so I see it as both the right thing to do, but I see it as good business as well.
Right. Good. So Tim, that's great. So now you've actually done some public speaking on this topic. So when you're up in front of a crowd and you're talking about this topic, what kind of feedback are you getting from the folks?
Great feedback. You know, to me, it's getting engaged at the most senior level of our industry. And I attended an event in Atlanta a few years ago that was run by NAMBA. NAMBA is National Association of Minority Mortgage Bankers, and mortgage bankers and mortgage brokers. And you know, what I noticed at that event, and I only went because I happened to be in Atlanta, and I had heard about this organization, and they're one of the largest minority-owned trade organizations in the country. And so I wanted to see what it was about. And what I noticed was there were no CEOs there. I was the only one there. And every large bank and mortgage bank had a diversity employee there. So somebody that runs diversity and inclusion and runs minority lending.
Right.
And I met with a number of them. But what was clear to me is that they were great people that really knew the issues and the challenges, but they were not in a position to actually make deals, and that they were not the decision maker. And so, you know, I would have our head of diversity and inclusion and head of minority lending, April Alexander. She's been with Prosperity since we started the company, and she would come back from events and tell me what we needed to do, but it didn't hit home with me until I was there. So I left that conference. I made 2 deals before I left that conference. One was to recruit minority candidates for us, and that's how we got the 23 CLOs.
Did you get them from that conference?
I got them from that conference.
Wow, that was great.
I made
that
a
was
recruiting
nice.
deal at that conference, and in 2 years, he has sent us 23 CLOs that are wildly successful. They're averaging 13 apps per month.
Yeah.
And then the other deal I made was with a company called D&E Consultants, and they have a counseling service that they get candidates from churches and communities, and they get them mortgage ready. So we pay for the counseling service. It's like $600, and sometimes it takes 2 months, sometimes it takes 2 years. But you know, I was able to make 2 deals. I mean, literally sign contracts on the spot, and that's what is not happening. And so the CEOs and the decision makers, they either got to empower the people that are attending these conferences, or they got to do it themselves. So I became way more committed at that point when I saw what could move the needle.
Right. And when was that?
That was in 2019.
Right. So you were ahead before of all this mayhem that we've just been through for the last couple of years.
You know, I followed it for years,
Yeah.
and I've always been baffled that we can't solve it. You know, I mean, if we had a business problem, and I look at it as a business problem. I mean, if we have a business problem at Prosperity, I get, you know, we've got the same 9 senior leaders at Prosperity when we started the company 10 years ago. I get them in a room. We say, here's the problem. We're going to test it in 2 or 3 markets. We're going to solve this. We're going to try different things, and we'll figure this out, and then we'll run it nationwide. Yeah. Well, that's what we need to do with this. I mean, we need to treat it just like a business problem, and it's very solvable.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, congratulations, and it says a lot about you that you got ahead of this and dove in and started working on it a long time ago. Everybody's doing it now. Now it's in vogue, and that's great. I think that's fantastic. And
I appreciate the fact. You know, we got the agencies are working closely with us. I mean, there's really strong engagement right now.
Fantastic. All right, well, we're chatting with Tim Wilson. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Tim. Hey, I'm John Jorgensen with the Go With John show. I started this podcast to share amazing stories and life lessons to inspire the folks out there who want to follow their dreams. I want to chat with entrepreneurs, folks in the building industry, leaders in business, and even some everyday people who have built something extraordinary. If that's you, find us at gowithjohn.com or email us at show@gowithjohn.com. That's SHOW at GOWITHJOHN.com. Let us know you want to be a guest on the show, and we'll get you started in the process. So we're back with Tim Wilson, CEO of Prosperity Mortgage. And Tim, that was really impressive to me, and I'm sure to a lot of the folks that are listening, that you were able to get in there and get ahead of the diversity challenge in business long before it became a daily topic on the evening news. So that's a great leader, and obviously that has a lot to do with how you became the CEO of Prosperity, and well deserved, obviously. So tell us a little bit about your history and how you grew up, and where did you get kind of your drive?
So, it's kind of an interesting background. I grew up, I was born and raised on a farm in Kansas, and when I was 6 years old, my parents moved to a small town called Coffeyville, Kansas, and they had 13 kids. So I've got 12 siblings and same parents, and we were obviously Catholic. That can go without being said. But so anyway, I was the 11th of 13. I had seven older brothers. And so, it was interesting in our household. We had 7 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, no shower, just 1 bathroom. So you become pretty efficient when you're living with 12 siblings and 1 bathroom. But, what is interesting to me is I've never looked at a job as a job. As we were young children growing up, we were seeing our brothers and sisters starting their jobs, and it all started with paper routes, and we would start paper routes when we were 11 years old, and we were able to observe that it gave them independence, that for the first time in our lives we had our own money, and we were, there's 13 kids, so you didn't go to your parents and say, I need money for a movie. That was your job. So our family grew up looking at a job as an opportunity, not as something we had to do. We've kind of felt that way throughout our lives. So every job I've had has, felt like a privilege. Right. And I think that's the way we approached it. And I was able to watch success. I had 2 paper routes at age 11, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And in those days, you went out and you collected. You didn't just, I had 123 people on my paper route. And I went out and you collect the first 80 to pay for the papers that you're getting delivered every day. And then the last 40 are the money you keep. So I was making about $80 a month as an 11-year-old, and that was huge money to me. Sure. So it kind of got me started on, jobs being a privilege and a pleasure. And it's kind of the way I've looked at jobs all my life. And I've loved every job I've ever had. So, I was fortunate to grow up in an environment where, you're looking at a job as not just a means to an end, but something you're privileged to be able to have. So I got into banking because after you went from the paper route, then you went to a job until you turned 18. Then you went to work for the local bank. And so my brothers and sisters, as they, it's just kind of a stair step, as they went to junior college in this small town and then they would move on, I would take their job at the bank, the next sibling in line. Like the paper route was in our family for over 15 years, same paper route. So it was just, my business path was laid out for me from the time I was 5 years old to the time I went away to college. So at 18, literally the day I turned 18, went to work at a bank. And I worked at banks throughout college, and they were great places to work because they gave me the flexibility. I could do sports. They would let me work off hours. I could work weekends. And so it was just a great tool to help me get through college. And it I just stayed in banking from that point on.
Well, plus you're on the front line with the consumer. You get to
absolutely,
meet people.
Without a doubt.
I think there's nothing better.
No, I was a teller for many years and loved it. I mean, I've loved every job I've had in banking, and so I just and again, I've loved every job I've ever had. But banking just kind of got me started. Started on the operational side, and then I went into the lending side not too long after graduating from college. So that's kind of how, and then every job just kind of fell in place from that point on.
So it's really interesting, you know, talking to Lillian, in my mom, Lillian Jorgensen, in the very first episode. So she grew up in a house with no hot water and one bathroom. And what was your, looking back on that at that time, did you feel like you were in a bad situation, or how did you feel about your life?
I would say the opposite. I mean, it was awesome. You know, I had two brothers, and three of us slept in the same room in bunk beds, triple bunk beds for I don't know, 10 years. You know, the other thing interesting in a household like that is we had what was called the bump system, and you know, you have, in those days, you didn't have a formal living room and a living room. You had a couch and two chairs and a small living room. And so, you know, there were 13 kids and 2 adults. And so we had something called the bump system. That was when somebody younger was sitting in a chair, anybody older they didn't even have to say a word. They just put their thumb up, and that person would have to get up and go sit on the floor. And there was never... It was never an argument, never a word exchanged. And it was just, you know, I thought that was like a federal law. And you know, as I then went to my friend's house, you know, I would try to bump one of their younger siblings, and they would say, dude, what are you doing? And so then my mom explained to me, that's a rule here in this house. But you know, it was, I never sat in a chair till I was 12 years old, you know. Wow. I mean, being number 11 or 13, it was, you know, but the bump system, you know, created discipline. You know, it taught you that there are going to be rules, and you don't argue with those rules. That's the way it is. And so you learn discipline in a house that size.
So how scarred is number 13? was that a brother or sister?
It's a brother. I got a little sister and a little brother, and
he got gypped.
Well, you know, it's. I mean, today we get together all the time, so you know we're extremely close. Grew up close, and you know, 10 of the 13 graduated from college, and the other 3 were very successful business people. So almost all of them are retired, and they all have retired back in this small town we lived in, and. So it's, you know, I don't know. I don't think anybody felt gypped. It's even more fun today than it was as we were growing up.
So it still lives in your family?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, some traditions should just never die.
Right.
So when you went to Coffeyville, did you guys still have a farm, or did you move off the farm then?
No, you know, we had, I believe we farmed 600 acres in Parsons, Kansas, and my dad was a full-time salesman. He sold insurance, sold hearing aids, worked for Manor Bread. Yeah. But he was always a salesman, and the kids did the farming, and, you know, we weren't successful farmers, you know, we were just kids. And but we had our own cattle, and we had chickens, and so we ate really well. Yeah. But my dad was always a salesman, and when we moved to Coffeyville, he had sold the farm, and he, you know, he raised 13 kids as a salesman. He was a great salesman. Yeah,
that was a good move. Farming's no joke.
Yeah, right. No, it is not. And he was, you know, to raise 13 kids as a salesman, he was very, very good.
Right. Fantastic. Well, Tim, thanks for sharing that with us. We're going to take another quick break, and when we get back, let's talk a little bit about COVID and some of the opportunities that you've seen that have arisen from this pandemic.
All right, great.
A lot of folks think that building a custom home is a complicated and arduous process. It doesn't have to be. At Stanley Martin Custom Homes, we have the process down to a science. We will bring you through the buying, design, and building phase one step at a time. Head on over to webuildonyourlot.com and check us out. Reach out to us if you want to get started on the path to your very own Stanley Martin Custom Home. All right, we are back with Tim Wilson, CEO of Prosperity Mortgage. So, Tim, let's chat a little bit about what we've been through for the last 18 months with COVID, and tell us what you have seen as maybe some opportunities that have bloomed out of this crisis.
So, the big thing I've noticed is, and listen, COVID was horrible, and it was terrible that the country had to go through that, but I hear people say things like when we get back to normal, and the one point I would make in our industry for sure, but in most industries is, that we're not going back to normal. I mean, the employer-employee relationship is going to be different. Mm-hmm. So the COVID environment forced us overnight to go remote. Mm-hmm. Now, had that happened 10 years earlier, it would have been a big problem. I mean, there would be loans that could not close, and because we were all connected internally to a network. Now, fortunately for Prosperity, we had gone 100% laptops and completely remote, and we did it because primarily we were Mid-Atlantic Northeast as part of Long and Foster, and we knew that there were weather events, and we had a policy that when the federal government closes, we close for weather. Well, they closed a lot, I mean, if you have a half an inch of snow, the federal government closed. So we couldn't depend on, our realtor is our customer.
Right.
And so we knew we had to be able to operate remotely. So anytime there was a weather event, we told our processors and underwriters, take your laptops home, and our loan officers, and we never missed a beat. Mm-hmm. So when this happened, it was, within 24 hours, we were doing everything remote. And we thought it might be for weeks or maybe a few months. Turned out to be over a year.
Yeah.
But it, we never missed a beat. Had the biggest year we ever had by far. So and we were able to measure the productivity of our employees on an hourly basis. So it was clear to me that the pandemic forced us to look at a different way to do business. And what came out of that are employees that said, I don't want to go back to commuting 2 hours. So, I'm out in the field now, and I'm not surprised by what I'm seeing, and it's the majority. If you go back to pre-COVID, 90% of our employees were coming into the office every day.
Right.
We had 10% remote employees. And if you go back to pre-COVID, 90% every day. We had an ops center in Bristol, Pennsylvania, in Towson, Maryland, Chantilly, Virginia, and they had 50 to 100 people coming in every day. So, and highly productive. But what we found was they were also highly productive from home and felt like their work-life balance was better. So, it's clear to us that in the new world, the new normal, and we don't know what that is going to look like yet. I don't think many companies do. But
I agree with you.
One thing I know for sure, it's not going to be the old normal. It's not going to
Correct.
be 100% of your employees coming to work every day. So I expect 60, 70, maybe as many as 80% of our employees will come into work 3 or 4 times a month.
Wow.
And what I think that, as I think all of that through, and I'm a student of real estate. I mean, I've been doing this for 35 years, and I've worked in 7 different states, and I've called on real estate agents all over the country for the past 35 years. So I study this, and as I look at the landscape, the single biggest issue in real estate today is inventory, and there's only one shot at solving that problem. That's build your way out of it. And the builders could not keep up. I mean, there's 86 million millennials that are between the age of 13 and 31 that are in their prime buying, are going to be in their prime buying period over the next 10 years. So there's no way we can solve that with the inventory that's currently on the market. So builders have to build at a much faster pace than they have up until now. The opportunity created by COVID is builders are going to be able to continue to build further out. I came from California. I lived in California 10 years, and I saw the dot-com boom and bust.
Right.
And the interesting thing in that environment is, and you'd have to be from California to know these markets, but there's a market called Inland Empire in Southern California. That's probably 40 miles out of L.A., and there's a market in Northern California called Central Valley, and it's Modesto and markets like that. And again, 40 miles away, but hour and a half commutes.
Right.
And as the internet boom was created, pricing got so high, people just kept moving further and further out, and they kept building more and more homes out. So everything worked okay. People were willing to take the commute, but it was brutal on work-life balance and everything. And then there was a dot-com bust, and those markets went completely bust. People lost tens, if not hundreds of thousands on their home. Really bad environment. So I think what COVID has brought to us is the opportunity to continue to build more remote. Keep doing the infills in the Bethesdas and the McLeans, but there are only so many you can do. That's going to create capacity, I think, within the Bethesda and McLeans as other people look to be able to build further out that can work remote. I mean, there's going to be people that are working for employers in D.C. every day, but only go into D.C. 2 or 3 times a month. That's
right.
There's no, and it's not going to be tens of thousands of people. It's going to be millions of people
Right.
across the country. So I think there's one shot at solving the inventory problem. That's to build your way out of it. And I think as I look over the next 10 years, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a lot of building over a 10-year period, but the pandemic is going to offer relief in the sense that the commute is no longer going to be there for millions of people, and it will create opportunity to build in say Loudoun County or some of the more remote areas, while freeing up inventory in some of the areas where it has to be freed up. So I almost by accident, I think it's the perfect scenario. I'm wildly enthusiastic about new construction builders and buyers, as well as the real estate industry over the next 10 years. I've never been more enthusiastic.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So my question is, and I don't know if we have a solution for this, but I'm hearing that a lot of corporations, some of the big corporations, are coming out and saying that, in the beginning stages of COVID, their remote workers were extremely productive, but now the productivity is kind of waning off and they want people back in the office. Do you see a challenge in managing the folks that are working remotely, and probably not processors and salespeople who are commission-based, right? Because they have to, they eat what they kill, but your administrative and support staff that may be working remotely. Do you see any challenges?
Well, I think there are two, and I went out and visited. I did a Midwest tour for all of our, what I would call back office ops personnel, processors and underwriters. I brought them into the office to meet with me to get feedback directly from them. And my, we're going to go to more of what I would call a hybrid model. And my thing, I guess I get it down to two challenges, and that's culture and training. And so I think you got to solve for those. Every business is going to have to solve for those. Now, I'm going to do that by not leaving people out of the office for a year and a half. So I've told our people, you're going to come in 3 or 4 days a month, because we're going to continue to drive culture, and that's where you're going to see it.
Yep.
And we're going to drive training. I mean, we did remote training for 18 months. And I would say with limited success. When you got people on video, and you're doing a 1-week training course, man, it's hard to keep their attention.
Sure.
So we are definitely going to bring training back to the office, and I think we can do that in 3 or 4 months. 3 or 4 days a month instead of 20 days a month.
So you bring everybody in at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Team building.
Without a doubt.
Fantastic.
So there's answers to this for sure, but it can't be the way you can't just say, hey, everybody's coming in every day. It's that decision's been made.
Yes, it has. Yeah, I agree with you. That's great.
So I think, there's an answer to this. And I think, and listen, it may be 5 days. It may be 2 days. We don't know, but it's somewhere between probably 2 to 5 days for most of our employees.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think some people are talking about 2 to 3 days a week. You're talking about 3 to 5 days a month, 2 to 5.
Correct.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Great. So we're going to take one last quick break, and then we're going to come back. And Tim, you're going to share some secrets of your success with us. So we'll be right back with Tim Wilson.
Okay. Thanks, John.
I'm John Jorgensen, and if you want to learn more about buying a home or selling your existing home, contact us through the show. We work with an incredible network of professionals who can help you get through the process smoothly. Again, that's gowithjohn.com. All right, we are back with Tim Wilson, CEO of Prosperity Mortgage. Tim, thanks again for coming in. I've really enjoyed learning some more about you today and hearing your stories. And I'm still trying to understand in my mind what it must be like to get bumped. I don't think it would do well with me, but if you ever give me this, I'll know what to do.
I am older than you.
Yes, you are. Yeah, I was just holding my thumb up. So I'll always have a seat for you wherever you are, Tim. Just,
all right.
All right, so Tim, would you share with us some of the things? Obviously, you're an extremely successful individual, and you're always thinking. I can tell you're always thinking, and you're reaching out, and you're trying to find new ways to improve the business and the culture of the company. What are some of the secrets or some of the values that you have in business that have gotten you where you are today?
Yeah, to me, it's more around touch and feel. And when I was a manager in smaller organizations, I used to call it MBWA, management by wandering around. And it was always touch. And as I got into bigger positions, it was both. I never got away from touch. I just think it's too important. But I started getting data. That data was vitally important. It's vitally important for me today. Every morning at 6 in the morning, I look at 3 or 4 reports all the way down to the rep level and processor level to know exactly what our backlogs are, what every rep is taking an application. So I got a good sense for the company, and I can spot trends, troubling trends or good trends.
Right.
And so before I leave the house, I've got a pretty good idea where the company stands and what I need to focus on.
Wow.
But I would say my management style in general, and I've been through lots of management training with some really good companies. I was at a bank for many years where the leaders of the bank came from Xerox, and Xerox at the time was one of the top training companies in the country. So I'm a big advocate of training and management training and overcoming objections and sales training, and so we invest a lot in that in Prosperity. Never read a lot of business books. I got people sending me business books all the time, and I'd read the titles and they look great, but I'm a voracious reader, but I read nonfiction and history, things that keep my attention. So I would say, that of all the training I've ever gotten, the one that has been most impactful to me is situational leadership, and I live by that. And I've got. We measure things by how many loans we get out of an office. So our typical baseline in every real estate office is to get 1 out of 4 transactions. So we call that capture rate, 25% capture rate. Right. So if you're getting 25 out of 100 loans, you're a successful office. So I kind of coined a saying that says, if you're at 25% or above, I work for you. Less than that, you work for me.
Right.
So I'm a big believer that when you got employees or managers that are getting the job done, you work for them. And your job is to say, what things can I take out of your way because you're doing everything right. If they're underperforming those objectives, then I'm far more directive. And I own their time. And so I'm more directive as to what I want them to do. And it seems to work out great because it turns out nobody wants to work for me. So, that strategy seems to work very well. But I think, I watch companies manage everybody the same way, and every contest is the same, every task is the same, and I think you got to get out of the way of the people that are killing it, and learn from them.
Right. So now what do you say to the folks that may be an aspiring CEO? So what kind of things, lessons have you learned along the way that kind of got you to the next level? So if you go back to being a bank teller, right? So we know how you went from milking goats to the paper route. I'm assuming you didn't tell me that. But, to the paper route, to the bank teller. What got you to the next level? Did you always just have a drive to get to the next level? Or did you say, hey, I want to be the CEO of a company one day? How did you get from there to here?
Well, I think it's just things kind of fell into place. It gets back to I loved every job I've ever had. So I've always considered a job a privilege, not something I had to do.
Right.
And I think that allowed things to fall into place to some degree. And the main thing as I got into higher management positions, it was really surrounding myself with talent, getting people that were great. If you look at, we started Prosperity as a single entity 10 years ago, and I think I've hired the absolute best in the business.
Right.
I got millennials in there. I've got a combination of young thoroughbreds, and then I've got a couple of grizzled veterans like myself, and it works very well. Every one of them 10 years later are still with the company. So
wow, it's good.
I hire the most talented people I can around me. I pay them well, and I empower. The most important thing is empower them.
Right.
And get out of their way. And so you got to have talent around you. It's not anything you can do by yourself, and I'm not talented enough to do it by myself. So you gotta build talent around you.
Yeah, that's good advice. All right, so now let me ask you: have you had some major challenges that you've had to overcome? Have you hit a brick wall, or have you had so? Obviously, I think COVID was a challenge, but have there been other things that have happened in your career that at the time you felt were devastating? Maybe not in your career for you personally, but maybe you were working with a company and there was a catastrophic event. I know we had a data breach here. Yep. That was catastrophic to some of our folks here. Did you have any events like that you can share with us?
Well, I would say the most recent event was March of 20. When COVID hit, it turned our industry, the mortgage banking industry, completely on its head.
Right.
Servicing values were wiped out almost overnight.
Yeah.
Which cost your P&L, tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
I had people at Berkshire Hathaway saying maybe we should stop taking applications. I mean, what I would consider a significant overreaction to
right.
non-industry experts. And I stepped back and looked at it and said, this could be the biggest opportunity we've ever seen in mortgage
right.
banking. And it turned out to be that.
Right.
Bigger than even I expected. And that's what I told the board at Berkshire is, in an environment like this, the feds are going to drive down rates. They have no other option but
right.
to do that.
Right.
And mortgage banking is the best hedge you could possibly have to get through this. And they agreed, and therefore we overcame those concerns in a very short time period. And they we had a hiring freeze. They took the handcuffs off. They let me hire what I needed to. So
right.
They made the right moves, and so I think when I look at something that looks catastrophic,
mm-hmm.
I just know from experience of doing this for 35 years that it's going to look very different in a month.
Right.
And you just got to work every day to get through that month, and that's
right.
what we did in a COVID environment. And I've seen that in multiple recessionary environments.
Right.
Same thing. You got to try to get ahead of it. But don't panic.
Right. I totally agree with the not panicking
Yeah.
part of it. So where were you you were with Prosperity in 2007, 8 when we had the mortgage.
I came to Prosperity, and actually I think it was 08 or 09.
Okay.
So
Right
in 07 I was
of it.
with Wachovia, and
Yeah.
Davis Stevens in 08 I believe was promoted from president of affiliated business to CEO of Long & Foster, and that's when he brought me in.
Right, because that was the last time before COVID that we thought the world was ending.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, and that's another one you could see coming.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and that's the thing about, I think, the opportunities that exist due to remote workers that will lessen that risk. That it won't eliminate recessions.
Right.
But I think it will lessen the impact on remote growing markets from a recessionary real estate environment.
Right. So your view is we are not necessarily in a bubble right now. You think we're in a pretty hard trend with housing and the real estate industry that's just going to continue for the next decade.
Well, I think we are in a temporary bubble created by lack of inventory.
Okay.
And again, to me, the builders are the answer. We got to build our way out of this.
Right.
And they have not been building enough units.
Yep.
But I mean, if I'm advising any builders right now, it's build like hell won't have it. And,
right.
and because the math doesn't change.
Right.
The math is as obvious as it's more obvious than it's ever been. The millennials are way bigger than the baby boomers.
Right. Well, not only that, I read, I don't have the data right in front of me, but I think the building industry, they were building 1 million homes a year, but I think for the last decade we've only been building about 500,000.
Yeah, they're way
new homes.
behind.
They're way behind.
And now there's a supply shortage.
Yeah.
That's going to get worked out. I
Yeah.
mean, as people come back to work and manufacture lumber, you're already starting to see prices come down some.
Yeah.
But the builders, there's only one shot, and that's to build our way out of it. And again, remote workers are going to create opportunity where lots will become available in more remote locations. And when I say remote, I'm not talking 500 miles from here. I'm talking 20 miles from here.
Right.
So
Right.
it just, there's only so many infills, right?
That's right.
And so I just, I do worry if the builders don't get ahead of this, that a bubble's getting created by lack of inventory.
Yeah.
It's not getting created because of a complete imbalance. It's simply lack of inventory. And the buyers are out there.
Yeah. Well, and I think if this, and I think you're correct, and if this remote working condition is going to stay in place, now people are having, 2 people at home that need an office or places to work. You have kids that are going to be going to school, but they're going to be coming home, and mom and dad or folks in the house may still be working, and they need space. So people need bigger houses. So.
Oh, even the higher end is doing well.
Yeah.
And that's a market. 10 years ago, I would have thought, people are going to go smaller. Well, it's turned out that COVID has
completely
changed
flipped.
that.
But you're absolutely right. 10 years ago, it was the jewel box house. It was the smaller house that was more well appointed. Now we need square footage.
Yeah, if you're going to work from home every day, you want to work where you want to. You know. So I mean, like I said, I'm wildly enthusiastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been doing this 35 years. I've never seen a more opportune environment. But if the builders, we got to build our way out of this. I mean, they've got to create more inventory than they've been creating at twice the rate they've been creating it. And again, the opportunity is there's plenty of land.
Right.
If you go to Loudoun County and other areas around, and going, somebody will commute an hour and a half 3 days a month, but they're not going to commute an hour and a half 20 days a month. So. That's where the opportunity is. I think it's huge.
Yep, 10-4 on that. I agree. So, Tim, in closing, thanks again for coming in. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Is there anything that you want to add to this conversation that we've had today?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything. Again, if I think it's a great time to be a homeowner, and one thing people ask me about rates a lot, know, and so that's always I get that question all the time, and I guess the one last thing I'd like to tell people is that, housing is driven by life events more than interest rates. Everybody is always almost incessantly focused on interest rates, and I like to tell the story. And I bought my first house in 1982. I had a 12% 2-year adjustable, 2-year balloon, with no locked-in terms after 2 years. It's just whatever the market was. So crazy financial product that you couldn't even imagine today. But at the time, I bought a 35,000. 1,400 square foot house in Paola, Kansas, on 20 acres. And I told my then wife, and that I had it all planned out. I was going to have 2 kids, buy a little place in the country with 20 acres, and then I was done. And I told my wife at the time, I love this place. We're never moving. And 2 wives, 5 kids, 7 states. Later, I'm on my 9th house. So the point is, interest rates didn't drive those purchase decisions.
Right.
Life events did.
Right.
I went from 2 kids to 5 kids. I got married and divorced. And those 2 wives, by the way, weren't at the same time. I want to make sure that's clear to your listeners. But, life events are what create purchase transactions. And so interest rates, they're going to come and go. And I tell agents and anybody, even homeowners, you don't focus on what you can't control. I mean, the head of the Fed Reserve is not going to take my call, and so rates are going to do what they're going to do. But, I've been through 35 years. I've seen every interest rate environment you could possibly see, and I've been busy the whole time.
Yeah, fantastic. Tim Wilson, CEO, Prosperity Mortgage, thank you again for coming in today. Really enjoyed the chat.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Go With John Show. Now go out there and build something extraordinary.